Hey everybody, it's Carolyn Bloom from Bloom Handmade Studio. Happy to be checking in with you from the studio here along the Hudson River in Sleepy Hollow, New York. I wanted to record a podcast today to touch base on one of my favorite topics, which is brioche, the knitted stitch brioche. If you've checked out some of my other podcasts, you'll know that brioche stitch has fueled so much of my creativity through the years. But I realized that in between my Bloom's Basic Brioche Scarf video and the multitude of videos that I recorded for Concurrent, one of my more complicated brioche patterns, there was a little gap, and that little gap was the two-color brioche project. And so I'm here today to tell you a little bit about how to work two-colored brioche. But before we jump into the mechanics on that, I thought I would just give you a quick introduction to this stitch and what it's meant to me through the years. I have some samples here to share with you. One of the ones being this particular one color. It's a dark gray, so gray it's pretty much black wrap that I knit all in one color, one shade. This is the Uncommon Thread delicious merino silk cashmere yarn, and I loved working on this on teeny tiny needles. I'm going to come in closer so you can see what I'm talking about. I think I was on a US 2, possibly a US 1 to make this particular wrap, and the result is this wonderfully wide, delicious luxe wrap that I think will be really wonderful when the weather finally gets a little cooler. From this single colored wrap, I worked on a striped version, working with just one color at a time. And if you follow me over on Instagram, you may have seen this one already, but this is the pattern that's on the cover of the Bloom's Basic Brioche wrap. The process to make this one is actually the exact same for the one color one. It's just that I striped my one colors at a time. The other thing that I did was I explored a bit of negative space here with this particular wrap. So I did half the wrap in this wonderful kind of stony gray and cream color. And then the other half is just a riot of fun, semi-solid, some kettle dyed yarns. And then of course, why not start your scarf with a neon pink? So you can see the range of things that you can make working with the Bloom's Basic Brioche wrap. You could do it all in one color. This was 3 skeins of fingering weight, which yielded this really timeless classic beauty. Or you can dip into your yarn, pull out all those scraps and leftovers, and make a striped version like this one. But once you get done working with one color of brioche and you've got the basics under your belt, what you may be curious about is how do you start working with more than one color at a time? And that's what this video is about today. To show you what I mean about that, I actually have a sample here that was knit by my daughter. Thank you, Elizabeth, if you're watching this. And she was home over Christmas break and is one of the few people that I will let in on just how much yarn I've accumulated through the years. She knows where all my hidey holes are. There's no keeping secrets from her in that regard. And so I told her, of course, you can go into my stash and pull out anything that you like to knit. And as if guided by a divining rod, she went into my dresser, opened up the drawer, and pulled out these gorgeous 4 skeins of yak yarn dyed by Mr. Wool. And I have to tell you, I was kind of kicking myself for giving her free rein because I had my own plans for those 4 skeins. But how do you tell a kid no, especially when you know she's going to make something just as beautiful, if not even more beautiful than what you will? So she decided she wanted to follow the Bloom's Basic Brioche scarf pattern, but she really wanted to let those colors play off of one another. And let me show you what I mean by that. Here on the one side of this wrap, you can see there's this beautiful kind of iridescent, glowing umber. It's, a pedestrian might call that orange. I think it's really so much more than just orange. It's got this wonderful sheen to it. Can you see if I turn this way, maybe that comes through. And then what she wanted to do is have the flip side of that be this equally lovely kind of taupe color, which is actually the undyed yak yarn. So when I worked with Felipe picking the hues, Felipe of Mr. Yarn, to choose these hues, I really knew I wanted something that would let that umber color shine and let that glow come through. And that's why I had originally ordered the natural to go with it. So Elizabeth worked this scarf following the 2-color technique that I'm going to show you here today. And I'm giving this a lot of buildup, and you might be thinking, my God, how hard is this going to be? The buildup and the wrap-up flanking that the actual instructions are going to take so much more time than actually the how-to. You're going to be kind of astonished. So if you're already tired of me yammering on about these things, feel free to go into those show notes and get to the time-stamped equations on where each of the techniques will be demonstrated for you. But I really love this 2-color version that Elizabeth knit, and she did use all of the techniques that are included in the pattern for the Bloom's Basic brioche wrap, including the I-cord cast on, the beautiful edging here with an I-cord that continues all the way along the length of the wrap and then concludes with the I-cord bind off. So I love how her 2-tone version turned out. And when she showed that to me, I thought, well, I want to make one as well. And it just so happened that that desire coincided with me having a second round of COVID. And I didn't really have the headspace to knit at that point, but I always want to have my hands kind of playing with yarn. So I tossed that aforementioned big gigantic stash onto my bed, and I did a massive culling and sorting and categorizing by weight of yarn and color of yarn. And oh, this turned out to be so illuminating on just how much yarn I've accumulated, but also sparked some creativity of my own on how I might go about maintaining that beautiful pile of color that was on my bed, but turning it into something to knit, which is to say I made a gradient rainbow 2-color Bloom's Basic brioche wrap. And so let me just kind of go slowly along here so you can see how the colors unfold. It is indeed a Roy G. Biv interpretation of that pattern, going from the hot pink all the way through your oranges, your yellows, greens, blues, indigos, and violet, ending here on this particular color. And I worked each of these colors as a front and then a back. And I think that that's really what helped guide that pretty gradient as it shifts from color to color. It's the fact that each hue has its turn being in the back of the wrap and then in the front of the wrap. And I think that that really helped the shifting from one color to the next. That wasn't necessarily all that graceful of a waterfall of color, but you know, you see what I mean. That here we can get into some of the yellows. From the front and the back, I really had a lot of fun playing with the yarns and giving them their alternate turns, being in the background and then in the foreground. And I'll admit that when I was about here in the project, I wasn't really sure how that was going to turn out. It looked a little muddled. I wasn't sure that the gradient flow was going to work, but I'll tell you, when you have COVID for another round, there's something about working with a rainbow that is just positively medicinal. And I do love the effect of the rainbow and the shifting of the color when this particular piece is being worn. So with this in mind, I wanted to record the video today that shows you how to work with 2 colors. And what I've done to prepare for the video is I've made the world's teeniest little scarf here. It's this tiny little swatch that has a dark side and a light side. And what I'm going to focus on today is just showing you what it means to work across a row, slide your stitches back to the beginning of the row that you just completed, work with your light color, and then once you've finished with 2 rows, one of the dark, one of the light, that's when you get to turn your work and work with your dark again. So those are a lot of words here. Once I get into the actual demonstration, you'll see what I mean. You just need to become comfortable with sliding your stitches and then turning your work. And once you have that under your belt, you're certainly ready to give a 2-color Blooms Basic Brioche wrap a try. I just want to mention that I won't be covering today how to work a 2-color I-cord along the cast on edge or along the side here. I've covered that in depth both in the Blooms Basic Brioche podcast as well as in my Concurrent podcasts. And so if you're not familiar with how to work those techniques, just hop back into my channel, and I'm going to group all of my brioche videos in a folder called, well, Brioche, why not? And so you'll be able to find them bundled there. And I'll just mention also that if you like the idea of working 2 colors and you get that under your belt, well, by gosh, you're ready to then go on to the next level and add some extra techniques to your brioching. And you can start doing some things like increasing and decreasing, which I did here in my Cabriolet wrap. So here's the light side, and then here's the dark side of the wrap. And you can tell there's really no such thing as a right side and a wrong side when it comes to brioching because of the technique that you work when you're creating this stitch pattern. Both sides are equally beautiful. And then once you've got some of those techniques down and you feel good with increasing and decreasing, that's when you're ready to work your syncopated brioche, and you might want to give Concurrent a try. I knit this, or actually I didn't knit this, my good friend Kina Paulson. Kina, hello if you're watching. Kina knit this for me, this sample with Concurrent yarns, her fingering weight, and also her Kid Silk Haze. And so by holding those 2 yarns double, she got this gorgeous kind of halo effect. Can you see that Kid Silk kind of adding some serious fluff to this pattern? And I love that by doubling them, she was able to work the DK version of Concurrent, even though she was working with fingering weight yarns held double. So this is syncopated brioche. This is Concurrent, one of my favorite patterns to knit. It is a true delight to see the colors shift mid-row, but once you have a handle on working a 2-color brioche project, you're more than ready for something like Concurrent or Cabriolet. Now, if you are partial to looking at books to learn stitch techniques, I do want to give Nancy Marchant a shout out, because it is because of Nancy that I have fallen in love with the brioche stitch. She is the creator of this stitch, and I just think what she's been able to accomplish with it is really remarkable. This is just one of her many books. This is the first one that I ever turned to learn how to knit the stitch. And if you're partial to seeing things spelled out in photographs rather than in video, I can't encourage you enough to give any of Nancy's books a try, but this particular one here, Knitting Brioche, this is the first one that I turned to, and I just think it's a revelation to have. And so you can see a lot of the pages are earmarked here as I've gone through it through the years and refreshed myself on how to do the technique. And I'll also mention that one of the things that Nancy includes in here is she shows how to work brioche as a lefty. And I'm an unmitigated righty. If you're a lefty and you're watching this, I'm so sorry. I'm going to be very prone to showing things as a righty because my left hand is actually rather useless. But Nancy shows in her books how to work the technique as a left-handed person, and so you might find those helpful for you as well. So without further ado, why don't we hop right in together and work on making a couple of rows on a little tiny swatch and get the technique under your belt as well. For the purposes of this video, my darker hue is going to be my main color. This lighter shade will be my contrast color, and I've indicated the right side of my itty bitty little shawl here with a marker. This video is not meant to be a demonstration of how to work an I-cord cast on or how to work the I-cord edging or even how to work the brioche stitch itself. If you need help with those topics, I've recorded in-depth tutorials on those. Just hop back over into my channel and you'll find them there. To get started with our first row, I'm going to begin with my main color and knit the first 3 stitches of my row, which is my I-cord, and then begin brioche knitting. So I'll knit that first stitch as a brioche knit, slip the next, and work my way across this first row, brioche knitting with my main color. I like to think of my main color as the leader and my contrast color as the follower. I'm going to end by slipping those last 3 stitches. To begin the merriment that is 2-color brioche, now what we need to do, now that we've worked our first row with our main color, we now need to work a row with our contrast color. And in order to do that, it may be apparent that we need to slide our stitches from the tip of this side of our circular needle to the other side so that we can begin working with that contrast color. So to do so, just simply take those stitches, slide them along your circular needle, and bring them to the tip where you began the first row with your main color. You'll knit the first 3 stitches of your I-cord, and then we'll begin by brioche purling. So we're going to give that first stitch a brioche hat, if you will, slip one with yarn in front, bring our yarn to the front, and then work a brioche purl stitch. And here, this is really where the merriment begins, because by brioche purling on this side, our right side of our swatch with the marker facing us, we're actually creating brioche knit stitch on the other side. I know that sounds a little mind-boggling here, but you'll see what I mean. I'm going to finish this row and show you. We've worked across as brioche purl, and that's how we get these beautiful brioche knit stitches here on the other side of our work. Now that we've worked a row on our right side with our main color and a row on our right side with our contrast color, it's time to turn our work. So turn our work indeed we will. And now we'll begin working with our main color, our leader. So here our leader is going across the row, but this time we're going to be brioche purling with our main color. And think of it this way: if you have knit stitches facing you that are not the color that you're working with, that means it's time to brioche purl. Those brioche purl stitches create knit stitches on the other side of our work. So since the dark side is facing away with us, we need to be brioche purling with our main color. And here we are finishing that row with slipping our 3 for our I-cord. Now we've worked across with our leader, our main color, so now we need to slide our stitches across so that our contrast color, our follower, can catch up with our leader. So let's go ahead and knit those 3 stitches of our I-cord. And we know that this row is the row where we're now brioche knitting with our contrast color. We know that either because our marker is not facing us, or you can even tell because of the color that's facing us. The knit stitches that are facing us are that contrast color. So we'll go all the way across with our contrast, our follower, if you will, catching up with our leader. Presto. And to continue on with this, you'll just carry on. When the marker is facing you, you know you begin with your brioche knit stitches with your main color. Then you slide your stitches back to this point of your needle and you begin brioche purling with your contrast color. Once you've caught up with the main color, if you will, that's when you turn your work and you'd begin brioche purling with your main color and then brioche knitting after you've slid your stitches with your contrast color. I hope this helps, and I hope you find a practical application for it either with Bloom's Basic Brioche Shawl or any of the other patterns that I've done with 2-color brioche at the heart of them. Hopefully you found that tutorial useful. As I said, if you want more information and you're partial to looking at books, I highly encourage you to check out anything written by Nancy Marchant, who is the innovator behind this wonderful stitch pattern. As a refresher, if you do want to buy the patterns that I've mentioned in here, you can go to my website, which is bloomhandmadestudio.com, and find all of the designs from Bloom's basic brioche wrap to cabriolet to concurrent, which I'm wearing right now. You can also find those on Ravelry. I'm Bloom Handmade over there. And if you want more regular updates on what I'm doing in the studio almost daily, you can follow me over on Instagram at Bloom Handmade Studio. Or if you prefer a newsletter, I send one of those out, I don't know, I'll call it every other week. Might be slightly less frequent than that. Certainly not enough to clog your inbox, but you can sign up for my newsletter at bloomhandmadestudio.com. If you enjoyed today's video, I'd so appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up and subscribe and share the news on what's going on over here on my channel. And I'll also mention that coming up soon, I'll be at the Wool and Folk Festival at the Marianated Yarns booth. I'm really excited to be one of Marian's booth babes and help you pick some yarn to work any of these wonderful projects. I'll be there with Deb of Spruce Lane Designs. Deb's a wonderful designer. I can't wait to see her. It's been too long. And she'll have some beautiful samples of her own that you can find some wonderful Marianated yarns to knit with. So I hope to see you there. In the meantime, thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it. See you soon.